With us this week, talking first about the federal civil rights investigation into APD, Editor-in-Chief of the New Mexico Law Review, Sophie Martin. Former U.S. Commerce Department official, our good friend Jamie Estrada. From the Garrity Group PR, Tom Garrity's here. And Associate Professor at UNM's Anderson School of Management, Harry Van Buren is back. But we're also joined by Harry's students in a class he's teaching here at UNM on organizational ethics. And we're really tickled that they're here watching the show with us tonight. Let's start with you, Tom, on this. We've had a news conference on Tuesday. We've had the U.S. Attorney's Office, our Chief of Police, our Mayor, all saying basically the same thing. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to figure this out. But there's a question that begs out there. And I want to talk about rank and file folks, police officers. It seems to be the meme out there right now is there's a culture problem inside APD. And somehow we have not heard from inside the culture of APD to either confirm that or not confirm that. So the public's left a little bit to wonder here. You see what I'm saying? It's a difficulty.
Yeah, it is. It's a difficult situation because, you know, I'm sure the rank and file really wants to tell its story. But right now, they're pretty much clamped down for the next year and a half for the duration of this particular event.
And that's about normal, that about a time, year and a half.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it really comes down to a matter of trust. I mean, you know, among the comments that I found very interesting from the assistant AG, I believe it is, I found his comment about trust to be the most relevant, you know, as far as how do we trust our police officers? Right. And obviously, you know, I do. I mean, I think we all do. We just wonder how far that trust can go. And right now, that's what I think the Justice Department is trying to figure out.
Interesting point there, Sophie, because when you think about who they're going to be talking to, they made it clear they are going to be talking to rank and file folks, upper management, but also the community. And we have to assume families who have been victims, if that's the word, of these shootings. You see what I'm saying? There's a lot of feedback coming here.
I do, and I think that that's necessary because it's one thing to hear from within the echo chamber, but it's another thing entirely to address, to seek to understand better how the police are perceived in the community. And to Tom's statement, I think we all trust the police. I think that that's actually not true for many people in New Mexico, that there's a deep distrust, I should say, in Albuquerque, in the Albuquerque area of APD amongst certain communities. And I think we also have a tendency to say, well, I am law-abiding, as I know you are. I suspect.
For the most part.
I am law-abiding. I have nothing to fear personally. But that doesn't mean that people you care about don't have something to fear. And that also doesn't mean that you can't get caught up in a situation in which you could be at risk, caught in the middle of you know, a dangerous situation involving APD. And so to say like, well, you know, I'm not having those problems, I think we have to acknowledge that much of the community is.
You know, Assistant AG Perez made a point, Harry, in the press conference that this is a civil issue and not a criminal issue. The investigation is based on civil, whether civil liberty violations have occurred either regarding the Constitution or federal law. And that's where it gets kind of tricky because one person's civil liberties violation is another person's tough cop. You see what I mean? It gets very, very tricky.
Absolutely.
So,
and it really does go to the whole issue of trust that's been referred to before. So perception really is everything with regard to this issue. So if there's a substantial portion of the community that doesn't trust the police, that's the reality, and that's the reality that has to be dealt with. And there is, of course, this split between the civil side and the criminal side, and I think that's appropriate because it's really on the civil side that we can look at the issues such as culture, and that culture really has to be looked at from top to bottom. You brought up the earlier point about we don't know what's happening with the rank and file police officers. Well, we do actually have some data from them. For example, they were surveyed about the most recent changes that have occurred, and a lot of them indicated that they thought the changes were politically motivated and an overreaction. So there is at least some evidence that a lot of these cultural changes haven't gotten buy-in at the patrol level, and that's really where a lot of the work of the civil investigation has to go.
Does this presume an assumption on the Department of Justice's part? When are we to hear this correctly that says, okay, we agree we need to investigate this? Does that automatically necessarily mean, yes, there are civil liberties violations in our view that we need to take on here? Can we make that assumption here?
I don't think we can make that assumption completely, but it is pretty clear that these these shootings and other concerns that people have gone on for a long time. And a lot of people would say, well, why now? And it strikes me as actually very similar to a lot of the white-collar criminal law cases. It takes a long time to assemble the evidence because it is, as we saw from the news reports and the newspaper and everything else, it's incredibly disruptive. And so it's pretty clear the DOJ would not have taken this up if they didn't have a pretty strong inclination that this was going on.
Sure, absolutely. Jamie, you know, it's interesting when you peel back the layer of this to last summer, in fact, where our mayor had his veto language saying to City Council, no, I do not agree we should have a Department of Justice investigation, and here's why. Some of it was technical, but basically it seemed to me he was trying to work with his chief and solve this before this eventuality happened. Well, the string has run out, obviously. So where does this leave the mayor? Is there a perception change now when we look at the mayor and how he's handled this now that DOJ is here?
Well, I think the mayor had no choice but to be as supportive as possible, and I think that's what we saw at the press conference was a mayor that was, listen, this decision's been made. It was put forth by the City Council. We invited them in. We've got to follow through and get to the bottom of all of this. So I think that looked very good for the mayor in order to pivot, you know, from his rhetoric earlier this summer, because I think he should want the investigation to go well. Because if it does, then it will reflect very well on him. But I'm not sure the timing will intersect very well with his re-election. That's the thing.
And there's a PR problem inside that too, Tom, when you can be cooperative to a point, but you do have to protect your guy.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So
absolutely. In fact, I had the chance to talk to a city councilor yesterday just on this issue, and you know he's looking to make a change at the top. And you know I'm not convinced that let's wait and see what the results are. Right. Let's wait for the onion to be peeled back, if you will, to its core. And that was another thing that kind of struck me a little bit from the comments from the assistant AG, were just how dramatic they were. It wasn't Sergeant Joe Friday of just the facts man, but we're going to peel that onion back. And what I thought was interesting, I had to do a little bit of a digging, but I found he used the same quote when talking about the work that he did in Maricopa County.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that he had peeled the onion. So I'm almost wondering if this is his. I mean, with obviously there's some very serious allegations. Some things that need to be looked at, but let's not reuse quotes from the past.
Speaking of wording in that Mr. Perez used, so that I found interesting, the word systemic came up a few times.
Yes.
Very interesting to me because it seems to me that word is used by folks who are very much opposed to APD's thing right now, that there's a systemic problem. This is not a one-off.
I think it does something actually different, and I think we're sort of touching on this here. There have been calls to oust Chief Schultz, and I think that what the DOJ is saying is this isn't one man at the top of the food chain who's causing a problem or not solving a problem. We have a tendency, I think, in the U.S. to say the buck stops here. We love that, and to think that there should be one person who's held responsible. But when they say it's systemic, they're talking about top to bottom.
That's right.
And that means you can't just change out Chief Schultz, cross your fingers and hope it'll go away. Now, when the report comes out, it may be that the DOJ feels that the chief has to go. But my hope is that what will come out of this are concrete suggestions for how to make systemic changes in order to improve policing.
And on that note, Jamie, right there, that systemic changes recommendations, it seems to me if I'm Chief Schultz, I'm going to do this at some point. If the walls start closing in, I'm going to look at this community and say, look, you want us to get serious about the use of deadly force here? Why don't you get serious about services for mentally ill? And for people who are struggling on the streets, then we won't have to be in these kind of situations that are really no win for my officers. So why don't we all get in the game here and figure out, we need to figure this out as a community, as a holistic community. But is that the chief's place to say something like this? Or is that the mayor's place? Or
look, the mayor is the closest to law enforcement. So he's the closest to seeing perhaps some, or the cops on the beat are the closest to analyzing what's really going on in the community. And so if these issues are, the kinds of things that surface, then you know what, then it's a prioritization of government services and figure out if there's really are solutions that can be made.
That's right.
But I don't know, I'm looking at some of the cases of where the shootings actually happened. Some of them aren't cases where mentally ill people. They were just straight out defiance it seems defiance of government or of the law. And so it just, but the reaction, was it too strong of a reaction? That's the question that needs to be answered.
Because the DOJ, Harry, is also looking at other violent acts, meaning not just deadly force with weapons, but tasers, Flashlights, as we know from the footage up in Santa Fe, that's a whole different
Right.
deal. But you know what I'm saying?
Right.
There's a lot of different ways to cut this. They're going to look at everything. So again, it seems to me they're going to have to rely a lot on what they're hearing from the community on
Right.
this. And I'd be really curious where this all ends up. Whose opinion's going to win the day?
Yeah.
Is it going to be the community, in fact, or is in fact saying, the police department saying, we've already implemented these 20 things, we're on our way, give us a break. You see what I'm saying? It could be difficult for the chief at some point because of that.
It is going to be very, very difficult, because if you think about all the ways that people have contact with police,
Right.
most people, thankfully, are not going to be involved with a police officer holding a gun at their person. But there are lots and lots of other ways in which people interact with the police. And so in some sense, it really does have to be, it has to square the circle in terms of having all these folks involved. So to simply blame the police, or to blame the chief, or to blame one person, or to blame even the people in the community, that isn't going to work particularly well. Obviously, there have to be concerns about what's going on at the leadership level, but there also have to be concerns about what's happening in terms of how people are being trained. How are the officers interacting with folks in the community? So you should always be suspicious of a one variable answer that says, if you do this one thing, it's going to solve the problem.
That's right.
A systemic problem means that there have to be lots and lots of hands on deck to fix it.
And Tom, just to close this out real quick, this could be an opportunity for the city. We're going to have a discussion about civil liberties and rights and what we expect from our law enforcement and what they expect from us, as well, as a matter of fact. This could be a long overdue conversation we could enjoy here.
It could be, and you know, like those types of conversations, they can be very painful in a community. I mean, a lot of stuff will come out in the process, but yeah, you know, perhaps it's time to have that.
Plus, also, by the way, I have to mention, I am on the board of the ACLU of New Mexico. I was not involved with these decisions, but I just have to say that. Ahead, Susana Martinez carves out a place among governors addressing the requirements and requests of Obamacare.